All right. Well, good morning. Here we are again on Wednesday. And guess what? We are in August.
Time flying. We're
School has
in,
started.
yes, New Year.
NFL training camps are underway. So we're about 4 weeks away from college football and NFL. And we're in the dog days of summer. So how about that?
I know. It's been blistering too.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, we're expecting throughout the nation some highs over the next 3 to 4 days. So people need to keep hydrated and keep as cool as possible because it's going to be a scorcher.
Oh, it is. Some parts of the country it's 130 plus degrees, touching almost 140. So be
Yeah. And
well.
that's a fair point. What about all the, not just NFL, what about these high schoolers and these college kids who are practicing? I mean, you're adding at least what? Not even talking about having your pads and your gear on. We're talking practicing, just moving around in that practice compared to people walking around the streets is an extra what? 25 degrees almost? All right, I think I lost you there for a second, but we'll see. Maybe I'll jump back in there in a minute, but there we go.
Yeah. I heard that one part before it dropped, but the practices have been early morning, like 5 a.m. for those student athletes. Um, Several years back when a number of athletes were passing out or dying from heat
Yeah,
exhaustion. They had to re-examine the practice schedule. I remember my last days of college practice when I was at Morehouse, and we went to morning sessions, um, especially the very early part of the summer because the heat outside was just too much. Too many
right.
guys were passing out from heat exhaustion, dehydration. Thank God we didn't have anybody succumb to heat exhaustion and pass away. But it's something that's really, really, really serious. The human body is very fragile at different parts and times of the day, especially when you lose a lot of the water.
Mm-hmm.
When our bodies are mostly made of water, it's very, very important to hydrate, try to stay cool. Another tough circumstance is drinking cold water and you're extremely hot and
Right.
cooling your body down too fast. Those are things that can create complications in the body as well. So, it's a lot of programs that have adjusted their schedules and they're doing morning sessions or late evening sessions, preferably morning sessions. They're done by 7 a.m. so that way they can prepare, get breakfast, and get ready for their uh, their schooling. So those things are very, very important.
Right, and that was one reason I bring it up because it's hot enough just people walk around in shorts and a t-shirt, let's say, if they're capable of in areas. But when you throw those pads on and that constant movement, that's why I was saying that's got to add at least what, another 25 degrees of feel to that outside temperature.
Absolutely. Those pads have a particular weight to them, close to about.
Right.
If you include, if you have, it depends on your position.
Mhm.
But they have been changing the size of the pads lately. But your average pair of shoulder pads is going to run you 15, 20 pounds. If you're a DB wide receiver, they might be a little bit lighter. And then, of course, your knee,
Yeah.
hip pads. Even if you wear even if you wear a, what do they call it? Back brace, not a back brace. It protects your rib protectors. I'm sorry,
Right.
rib protectors, but also with that back pad, that's still another 10
Hmm.
pounds worth of padding that you got to add, especially if you're running back, taking hits in the back, tight end, taking hits in the back. You're going to wear those. Some wide receivers wear those pads in the back because they know those slat patterns they run across the middle of the field. You're
Right.
going to take a hit to the back, especially if you have to turn or torque your body um, to catch the ball when the quarterback throws the ball away. You might have to turn your body and you're going to take a jolt to the back.
Oh yeah.
And hopefully you don't take the crown of that face mask in the back where you have spine damage. So they have to have the protective padding for that.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So, got quite a few different things that we're going to be looking at today. Some interesting things have come forth. One of them is going to be Minnesota, which we'll get into some detail of that. But one of the first things we're going to hit on in Florida, because we talked about that not long ago, saying that we bring up some more things on the ballot, the initiative, and whatnot. So we figured we'd check into a little bit. And the advocates of this initiative have gained the required numbers of signatures for voters that are required for the congressional districts. So now the Supreme Court must decide if the initiative as written meets those state requirements. And the Attorney General takes the position that it does not and is requesting more time to write a brief on these effects. The Supreme Court granted the request, and the current filing deadline is today. So we'll have to see what happens there. So the polling, though, shows that majority of the Floridians support the legalization of the adult use of cannabis, and that the market could be quite large if the initiative makes it into the ballot and the voters approve it. So we've got some leeway, some gains, some ground, but we're still in a holding pattern.
Yeah.
So, the bright side is now the filing deadline is today. However, like we said, the Attorney General is taking a position that does not, and is requesting more times for this brief to be into effect. But we all know that the actual voting is not going to happen until around November. So there is some possibility of moving traction forward, but there also is that possibility of it could go backwards.
It is. I think that the research should still continue. That way, it still answer more questions. And the most important thing is creating a system where we've gotten it right. We know what to do, how to do, when to do. And right now, it's still just this huge, big questions that's still lingering.
Right.
Even though there may be a public outcry of advocates that's pushing forward, we still need the applicable research, and we need the structure in order to regulate it and standardize it for the public at large. We still got to protect the public, even though we put it out there. We still got to protect the public from rogue distributors who do not uh, do the correct dosaging or create the
Right.
correct packaging that's safe not only for adults but children.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors that you got to be taken into uh, when you put something like this here on the table. And they take their time to kind of just ponder it. But I just wish that people would take more steps in the research portions of it. There should be state allocations for research. There should be more grants for research that's put out there, because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that we just got on the shelf. It's crazy.
Well, and not just multi-billion, and absolutely you're right. And we know money drives everything. This is a huge possibility to help people get the medicines they need, get the help that they need without relying on the opiates or any of these other medicines that are, guess what? Let's be honest, mixed, cut, laced, however you want to put it, with multiple products that are not good for the human consumption.
Yeah, that is true. And that's why I emphasize more research. And I just hope that there is a way to get more grants involved, and it really just comes from the powers that be at the very, very, very
Right.
top. The people who create the budgets, they have to add that to the budget. They have to add the grants and the allocation of the grants to the budget. So it's totally been overlooked, and it's something that needs to be discussed.
Absolutely. Now we got a little bit on the flip side that's not so great, but maybe not quite as bad as it sounds, because of Ohio, for example, has a ballot initiative drive to contend with, and supporters of the adult use legalization fell just short of the signatures needed to put the measure before the voters. But they've been given a 10-day period to obtain the final 679 signatures that they need. This 10-day period should end roughly around the 7th of this month, I believe. And if they're successful, this measure would appear on the ballot this year. And only a simple majority of voters will be needed to pass such measure.
That's good news. just knowing that the steps are moving forward, and there's not a path of great resistance, so it's definitely welcome.
Well, and let's be honest here. This is a substantial number, but 679 signatures needed. That's all they're short right now. That could be done in, I'm sure there's regulations of how you can get these signatures and whatnot, but the average attendance, for example, of people shopping in a mall probably exceeds that number for the day. So this is an obtainable number.
It is. It totally is. 659 can be. I mean, depending on the number of voters going into the polling, I mean, it can be done in a matter of minutes.
Right. Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what the legislation sets forth and saying you can't get the signatures here, you can't here. I'm sure all of that plays in, but that's an attainable number. So that's the bright side.
Absolutely. And you can also focus that in the area where the greatest support is at.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. And that's what you want to do. And that's what you need to do. And that's something that, let's be honest, politicians do. They go to the area where they get the majority of support to get their votes, their legislation, whatever it might be. So absolutely correct on that.
Yes.
So how about this? We know that this market, this industry is not just here in the US. Albania, over in Europe. Albania has legalized the use of medical cannabis. The country's parliament passed the bill with significant majority, but appears the new industry will be focused on attracting the foreign investment and exploring cannabis more than just in the local market. So this could be something to keep an eye on. This could be interesting because they are going for the medical, but apparently they're not just trying to keep it locally and homegrown, so to speak.
That's very interesting. You have any more information on that?
I don't. I'll pull up a little bit more in a minute, see if we can get a little bit more. This was something that I just actually found this morning. So I'm not sure, what they're looking at, how they're doing it in terms, but let's be honest, like we talked about before, we're talking multiple countries inside of that Europe district that could be on board, that could help. So to us, for example, this could be like Texas having it and then asking Louisiana to buy into it or to buy from them. So that could be something that is great news for the European market and for the cannabis market.
Absolutely. And that, Amsterdam is the example. Of course, they lead the way, not only in totally support of the industry, not 100%, but 1,000%.
Right.
So it has been the model. It's been very, very profitable for that country for decades now. So I think that the equity that they're generating, other countries want to generate it as well.
So I'm going to give you a little bit here. First of all, it passed on a vote of 69 to 23 to allow this, okay? It's not clear how the medical cannabis will be regulated yet. The government believes that allowing limited production of the cannabis can help boost the tax revenue. Now, in 2013, the left-wing Socialist Party government set to destroy the cannabis plants as a main target. And over the next 2 years, they destroyed roughly $8.5 billion worth of cannabis plants and potential product in that country.
Yeah, that is
Wow.
a jaw-dropping statistic right there. When you really think about it, and the tough part about it is that the mindset is we're going to be on the negative side of this.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to regulate it till we strangle it out of business. We're going to arrest and fine as many individuals and businesses as we possibly can, not realizing that you can make it a win-win scenario by allowing people to make money. You tax the people who make the money, or you tax the business that make the money. You set up the structure not only to regulate it, but also in any business formation, you have to pay for the applicable licensing to be in that business, especially in that sector. And then not only give people a chance to make a living and a
Right.
life off of this product, whether it's on the wholesale or the retail market or the industrial side where they develop the product. There's still all of those layers that creates bona fide job opportunities. But instead, you'd rather strangle it out of business,
Mm-hmm.
strangle it to where no one makes anything and you make your money at the end of the day off of the prosecution of people and creating unfortunate circumstances that the taxpayers have to pay. So,
No, exactly. And now think about this. This is something that's interesting because this is not just as simple as passing a bill or not passing a bill. Because in 2013, when we talked about they destroyed $8.5 billion worth of product, right? Check this out. More than two-thirds of the country's annual gross product at that time. In 2014, a police officer was fatally shot during a crackdown in a southern village looking for these products. Okay. The southern village used armed personnel carriers. Police came under atomic weapon and rocket fire from the drug growers. Okay. First of all. Second of all, a senior official in the Albanian government was arrested under suspicion of smuggling across the border. So they've been having a lot of go back and forth and a lot of issues with this that hopefully now that's going to be stopped because now they're going to allot the medical and possibly helping with other European markets potentially. But I mean, think of that. That's clearly, we've heard the rumors or the talk of the U.S. and drug war, right? That literally was a drug war, was it not?
yes, true indeed. And what I want to just emphasize to you, Nate, more than anything, as long as law enforcement still maintain the same mindsets, I don't care if it is still medical, they're still
Mm-hmm.
going to arrest you. If they
Correct.
smell weed, they're still going to arrest you. You're still subjected to a circumstance just because on the books overall it's still a Schedule 1. And until there's a not only a full decrim in place,
Mm-hmm.
but it really just needs to be pulled off of that schedule. If it's pulled off that schedule, there's no reason to do a decrim on there.
Right.
There's no reason to be subjected to arrest. But one of the things about cannabis itself is the pungent odor that comes from it.
Right.
That is unpleasant to the nose of many people.
So a statement of about 3,100 officers have spread out around the country checking greenhouses, old army depots, tunnels, abandoned houses where cannabis seeds and small plants have been hidden. Now, last year, authorities destroyed roughly $2.5 million worth of plants, 4 times more than that year prior. So they're saying many metric tons of cannabis were seized at the border crossing points or from boats bound for neighboring Italy or Greece. So we'll have to see how this changes, if this even changes.
Nate, and I want to just add something in that total outlook when you talk about that. In I don't want to call it the black market, but in the underground market, which
Mm-hmm.
means it's not in the retail, it's
Right.
behind the string, it's behind the scenes. That is a multi-billion-dollar market,
Yes, it is.
and people will take those risks just because of the high monetary rewards that's
Mm-hmm.
there. It's high stakes there.
Right.
And some people are willing to take those risks for those high stakes to get in, get out. And sometimes when you get in, it ain't that easy to get out. And
No.
sometimes when you get in, you may not want to get out. The money and the perks and the benefits may be so tremendous that you stay and you continue not only to reap those rewards under assumed risk, but you still put yourself at the end of the day, you're gonna lose. The powers
Absolutely.
that be, when they get you, they're gonna get you, and you're gonna pay a heavy price. Um, you lose your freedom, you lose all the monies that you made. Um, so you pay the price.
You do, but we're going to switch gears to something a little bit on a brighter, happier side. Very interesting concept, and I like this. And it's only in one state, and we'll get to that. So after a state legalizes adult consumption, attention off the turns where it may be consumed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Public use is not often allowed, as we know. We've talked about it in Vegas. That leads customers to be held home with their purchase, right? But let's say you wanted to gather with friends for some herbal refreshment as part of a, say, wedding celebration, a game time gathering, or a business outing, right? Bachelor party, and this stuff. Where can you do that? The answer is Denver. So how about this? And the answer is actually called Cannabis. All right. So what you do is you need to bring your own supply. Although if you're part of a wedding party, say, you can take the bus to a dispensary, and it's the fourth license for a mobile marijuana consumption lounge the city has issued. But in the time of declining sales, perhaps the idea will catch on more broadly, they're saying. So think about that. Kind of like here in Georgia and Atlanta, more so, you have like the fur bus and whatnot, where what do? You in a group, you rent the bus, you go to a party, you go to a ball game, you go to whatever. You can have the alcohol on the bus. They're trying to do the same thing with a cannabis bus. What's your thought on that?
It's pretty cool. The
Yeah,
operator has to submit to a level of operational standards, and then the bus itself is located in the city streets, the public right of way.
yeah.
So it does not have a private property where the rights of that private property can be violated. So in the city streets, the city has granted them a right of passage.
Mhm.
So
And one of the
that's a
key things, right? And I'll say, for example, it does say you have to bring your own supply, but it can take you to the dispensary. So you can't get on the bus and they sell it to you or they hand it out as part of a package, but you are allowed to smoke it, bring it, or go and pick it up.
no, it's pretty cool. Very interesting concept. What it does is the city does not allow you to sell or purchase while on the bus because you don't have a
Right.
license to do so. But you can go to a licensed dispensary to actually get whatever products and you can actually use it. So it's a great consumption lounge theory. It
It's
allows you to
safe.
be picked up and be dropped off at a location that's safe. You know you're going. And at the end of the day, when you are still in the stars, you still can be dropped off at home safely because, hey, all right, guy, party's over. Here's your address. You make sure you get inside safely and have a good night. That's a pretty great concept.
Well, and wouldn't you think that a dispensary, and I'm not very familiar with the dispensaries in Denver, but don't you think that they would want to, and I would hope be capable of doing some type of partnership? Hey, you know, we're going to advertise inside of your bus. We're going to advertise on the side of your bus. We're going to work out something of a referral, possibly. Who knows what? You pick them up, you bring them to our place, we sell it to them, we give you a referral fee, and they hit on and have fun on their road to whatever the next stop is.
That concept's in the hand of the entrepreneur that establishes that concept, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course, you know, get the licensing rights from the city to do so. And then you go to those businesses to say, hey, I'm licensed to travel people
Right.
to your dispensary. I would love for you to advertise on my vehicle, advertise inside of my vehicle, so that way I still can be able to maintain this opportunity of a possible profitable business venture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think it's great. I'd love to see other places, Vegas, California, wherever, do this as well. I'd love to say all 50 states, honestly. That'd be fantastic. But some other positive news, New York, and I think we talked about this about what, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. Housing Works, which is a cannabis company, it's the first adult use retailer to open in New York itself. Well, guess what it did in its first 6 months of operations? It generated about $12 million in sales.
Sounds like a good number to me. 12 million sounds like 144 million at the end of the year.
Right?
That is a great number right there, man.
And you
Great
got to
number.
think, so far, this is the first adult use retailer to open. Who knows? Maybe in the next year plus, they're able to open another three or four at least. So now across the whole state, we're talking possibly close to $1 billion in sales.
Sounds phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. So one major topic I want to get into, and this is going to take a little bit to break down. So this is probably going to be what we'll use Well, actually, before I get to this one, this I thought was really interesting. I want to make sure we touch on this. MasterCard, for example, has told U.S. banks to stop allowing marijuana purchases with its debit cards. They don't want people doing it. They're highlighting the legal and financial gray area in the industry exists, with even more of states legalizing it, which we know, but large banks and credit card companies have generally restricted cannabis purchases because, of course, as we've stated, it's illegal under federal law, leaving very few payment options for buyers in places where it is legal. Now, 38 states, 2 territories, and DC allowed medical use for some conditions, and 23 states, 2 territories, and DC have legalized recreational. MasterCard said in an emailed statement this past Thursday, the federal government considers cannabis sales illegal, so purchases are not allowed on our systems. So before I get to the next part of that, what's your first thought on that?
Well, remember, anything through the wire is federal.
Mm-hmm.
So they can shut down any and everything, including MasterCard.
Right.
So MasterCard is trying to avoid being chin checked, and that chin check can get them knocked out of business. So
Right.
I truly understand where they're at, and it's because it's still a Schedule 1.
And I understand that. I agree with you on that. I agree with the reasoning. I don't want to say I agree with them doing it. I agree with the reason why, say, MasterCard's doing it. But especially in these states where, even though federally it's not, this is now classified as legal. This is a huge number for them to lose. This is also a hard issue for patients, for consumers to be able to purchase. However, some buyers and dispensaries have found a loophole in pen transactions. As we were made aware of this matter, we quickly investigated, a company said. In accordance with our policies, we instructed the financial institutes that offer payment services to cannabis merchants and connects them with a MasterCard to terminate the activity. The spokesman of the U.S. Cannabis Council said the industry estimates $30 billion in revenue this year would be overwhelmingly generated through cash transactions, which would put some workers and community at greater risks. So, supporters of efforts to allow cashless transactions at dispensaries say forcing the business to operate only with cash initiatives would be thieves. It would absolutely make no sense that legal businesses are being forced to operate entirely in cash, and it's dangerous, especially as we've said before, without safe banking, and sometimes even fatal for employees behind the register. Now, Senator Pat Murray, a Democrat out of Washington, said in a statement to the Associated Press last year amid a surge in dispensary robberies in her state, state legal cannabis businesses are locked out of most banking and financial services. The announcement by MasterCard is a powerful reminder that we need action from Congress.
So just to add on to that, in the previous statement, we talked about a state generating 12 million a month.
No, that was in 6 months. 12 million in 6 months.
12 million in 6 months. So let me redo my calculations. That's close to about $40,000 a day.
Yeah.
If it's 12 million, and you said 6 months, so that's
6 months.
That's 180 days. So that's $66,000. $66,666.66. That is the average daily intake. So when you're taking in $66,000 and it's cash, I mean, you got a security cost that's very, very real. You better have a bank truck picking up your money. You better have an armed guard at your door. And you're going to need more than an armed guard, because some people will deem that $66,000 more than enough to try to breach with 5 people. So one armed guard is definitely not going to be able to stop 5. So it puts a burden on that business that's so tremendous that it's not only not safe to be in that position, but you really have to assess the safety of all of your people, including yourself and your business. That is something very, very serious that you have to think about. You have to take it very, very serious, because it's a lot of people in this world right now. They are short of cash, they're short of money, they're short of opportunities, and they don't think beyond the moment that they're in, that there's any other way to make that money reasonably or lawfully. They really take it. And it's a lot of takers. There's more takers in the world by the day that you have to be prepared for. So, you know, I really hope that someone can really look at that. The safe banking is something that's totally necessary. I
Correct.
mean, what it does is it allows the money to pass hands, even though it might have a cost that's associated with it. But what it does is it makes it safer for the people that's in business to do so.
Well, and the other thing, and I don't know exactly how New York's set up, but remember here in Georgia, for example, alcohol until the last several, what, let's say 6 years now, you cannot purchase on Sunday. New York may have that same rule. So those numbers that you give, although they are very high, that could actually, instead of being a 7-day period, might end up being a 6-day period, which means that's going to be even more cash on premise on that day if they're not able to sell 7 days a week. Just a thought.
That is true. And I think really when it comes to legislation, we have a lot of things in our society. The social norms that are set in place uh, do needs to be reevaluated. The social norms of 1990, 2000, 2010 has no play in
Right.
2020, nonetheless 2023.
Well, for example, taking those social norms, we've all seen these commercials about drunk driving and whatnot, right? We've seen them. We've heard the radio ads. That's pretty commonplace, right?
Yeah.
Last night I saw something I'd never seen before, and I want to say that it was on ESPN, but I could be wrong. So it starts off with a group, say 6 to 12 people roughly. Looks like they're in a house, maybe having a house party, right? What it looks like somebody vaping. You see the smoke in the air. And at first I was thinking it's going to be another one of these vaping ads talking about don't vape, the metal that goes in your lungs, whatever. The guy steps back, they pull back, they show an area that you could tell is being a commercial, correct?
Yep.
He then goes to state that even something along the lines of being slightly high is too high to drive a vehicle, and that you need to be cautious when partaking legally of your actions of driving, and that you should get a cab or a DD or something along those lines, like we see with drunk driving, if you have been smoking and you're too high. And that's the first time I've ever seen something like that. So that was interesting to see something different on TV, having people state, yes, it's legal, but be protective and be mindful of others. I'd never seen that before.
Nah, it's encompassing everybody and everything, and it's just spot on.
But I thought it was interesting that now we're seeing ads for it, which I think is great, because hopefully that's also going to help with the stigma and the social norm, so to speak, saying, hey, yes, this is legal, hopefully all legal states soon. It is legal, but it still could cause problems with driving, such as alcohol. So I thought that was actually a major plus, seeing that ad.
Yes. Yes.
So something I wanted to throw in there since that topic. But we're going to close out on the last time being, because this is a little bit intense. Minnesota. We know that Jesse Ventura, the former governor there, has been pushing for a long time for legal, correct? So how about this? Minnesota can legally possess and grow their own marijuana for recreational purposes starting yesterday. Subject to limits, meant to keep a lid on things while the state sets up a full-blown legal cannabis industry, okay? The Democratic-controlled Minnesota legislature approved a massive legislation bill, and the Democratic governor, Tim Walz, signed it in May. At least one Minnesota tribe plans to take advantage of the sovereignty and law sales right away. But the state projects most legal retail sales won't begin until early 2025, while it creates licensing and regulatory systems for this industry. Legalization followed a debate between critics who fear the impacts on public safety, young people, supporters who argue the prohibition of the drug that failed, backers of the law, all these different things, right? So Minnesota is now the 23rd state to legalize recreational marijuana, more than a decade after Colorado and Washington. Interesting, it's the 23rd state in 2023, right? Hopefully that pattern changes. So we're not looking at 24 and 24, 25, 25, and so on and so forth. It comes as New York struggles to end the illicit trade while failing to quickly license legal shops with a focus on social equality. And New Mexico pushes retailers for illegal selling weed sources from California. Okay. Now, here's a look at what will and will not change of what's going on in Minnesota effective as yesterday. But before we do that, what is your first thought on that?
That is a very comprehensive discussion there, because with Minnesota, I wasn't even aware about tribal rights there, so that's very
Right.
interesting to look at. So that would pretty much push that up to the top of the priority on that realm. Number two, with it being presented from a former wrestler who also became governor of that state, I think it's very, very easy. And the reason why I think and feel so is just because as an athlete, he went through a lot of body
Oh,
trauma.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And his recovery probably sounds like he had some form of dosing in his regimen to keep him at the top tier of his sport that he was actually in.
Right.
So for Minnesota, also remember Minnesota has formally set up an education proponent that is one of the first to be introduced in the country for education in cannabis science and cannabis research.
Right.
So Minnesota has a number of layers in place from a progress standpoint that should see this being the first state to fully not only license it, but to also fully be able to industrialize it and retail it and wholesale it. So
Right.
I think Minnesota possibly is on track and on pace to be the first state to all in be able to produce and sustain cannabis in the country, especially when they have an educational proponent already in place to educate people in the multiple layers of not only cannabis science, but the cannabis business place.
Mm-hmm. So here's a couple of things of what's legal. For example, adults 21 and older can possess and travel in the state with 2 ounces of cannabis flower, 8 grams of concentrate, 800 milligrams worth of THC containing edible products such as gummies and seltzers. They can have up to 2 pounds of cannabis flower at home. Now, low potency edibles made with THC with industrial hemp were legalized this past year. They've been subject to 10% of the sales since July 1st, so just over a month. The tax will apply to other products as they become licensed for sale, but not on the sovereign tribal lands. It remains illegal under federal law to bring marijuana in from out of the state.
Wow.
All right. So the retail, the Red Lake Nation plans to sell recreational as it exists medical cannabis dispensaries starting yesterday. But that's at a remote reservation in northwestern Minnesota. It's not clear yet whether the other tribes will follow or not. While states like New Mexico managed to legalize and regulate marijuana within a year of legalization, Minnesota took longer. Like New York, the Minnesota law gives priority to social equity considerations for awarding licenses. That means applicants from low income areas that have felt disappointed of effects from the marijuana being illegal, people who have convictions can have expungement, and military veterans who lost their honorable status due to marijuana regulated offenses, just to name a few. That includes a long list of license category for cannabis related businesses with application fees ranging from $250 for delivery services to $10,000 for growers and product manufacturers. Local governments cannot ban cannabis sales, but they can limit the number of retailers to one per 12,500 residents.
Very interesting. Um, and I think all of that is all in the sake of progress.
Mhm.
And it sounds like it's about 2 years away from
Probably.
fully being where it needs to be at.
So adults can grow up to 8 plants at their home with no more than 4 flowering at a time. The plants must be grown in an enclosed, locked space that's not open to public view, whether that's indoors or in a garden. Retailers can start selling seeds if they comply with labeling and other requirements set by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Now, where to smoke it? It can be legally consumed on private property, including private homes. Eventually, it will be allowed in special events where organizations and organizers have permits, but it's still illegal to smoke or vape cannabis anywhere that tobacco smoking is prohibited, including most businesses, apartment buildings, college campuses. Nothing in the state law prohibits smoking it on the public sidewalk. However, local ordinance might. Cannabis users can remains illegal in all forms while driving, in public schools, on school buses, state prisons, or federal property. It can't be smoked or vaped where minors could inhale it.
Very interesting. And you know that what's good in one hand, it's giving you the permission to grow at home up to 2
Mhm.
pounds, and you can possess. Okay. Um, but what's to say you got a neighbor, you're out on your back porch or patio, you're
Right,
smoking, and that odor passes into their yard, and they call the police, and they come in, and you got 2 pounds in your home.
right,
Oh my God! Without it taken off of Schedule One, it puts you at risk of losing your freedom and your home at the same time.
right.
So it's a that was a slippery slope. I got to say on that one.
Well, it is, and especially when you look at a lot of the homes in Minnesota, the homes are built close together. So you don't have a lot of area where you're going to sit out there on your back patio and not worry about, it going 15, 20, 30 yards to your neighbor or whatnot, because it's almost like these townhomes and apartments. It's going to be very close. So that brings up a very, very good point. But a second point to make is that federal law still bars cannabis consumers from owning firearms or ammunition, as we talked about. But how about this? That's despite the Second Amendment friendly provision in the Minnesota law. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives said that regardless of Minnesota's new law, a current user of marijuana is defined as an unlawful user for federal purpose. That means people following state laws are still prohibited from having their guns, and gun purchasers must fill out an ATF form stating whether or not they use marijuana, and lying on the form is a felony under federal law.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it forces you to give up your gun rights,
Right.
and the ability to protect yourself, in an ever-changing landscape where people are more angry, people are more upset. There's limited opportunity, and like I say, we have more takers in the world, and we have to
Mhm.
protect our truths through our Second Amendment constitutional right to bear arms. And they're taking that when we try to use the things that from self-medicating to help our wellness, to preserve our peace. They're taking that away and creating anxiety. So you just in this catch 22. So we got to work on trying to fix that. That's something that we
Right.
got to continue to talk about, and the right legislator get the notion to continue to push this forward for a change, because this needs to change.
Absolutely. Yep. Now, they're also going to do expungements. Minor convictions, like possession of small amounts, will begin to automatically expunge starting in August. So that is now beginning. More than 60,000 Minnesotans could benefit, but the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension says the process could take up to a year to clear all the records. Now, they have started a special cannabis expungement board, which will be formed to review felony convictions to determine eligibility on a case-by-case circumstance.
Okay.
And regulation-wise, the Office of Cannabis Management will oversee the cannabis industry. It's starting a list of job positions with applicants for the office's first executive director open through July 31st, so it just started. The office will take over running the Minnesota's medical marijuana program, which won't be taxed. Tribal governments will set their own rules. So a lot of things are happening tribal-wise in Minnesota that they're going to have a lot of say on, but you see how it also has a lot of differences for them compared to everything else in the legalization in the federal end.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
So that's the breakdown. That was a lot there to kind of comprehend on the Minnesota, but overall, does it sound like something that at least is on the path of helping, or is this something that could be very, very slippery slope, as you said, and not sure which way it's going to go?
There is a gray area there, without question. Somebody there is trying to make it happen.
Right.
But you know, one of the words that I used in a previous episode was catch clause. They can catch you in the act, you got you. And when they catch you in the act, your freedom's in their hand, your finances is in their hand because you got to make bond to get your freedom back, and then your property itself is in peril because now you were consuming. They say that you can use it there, but then once the police do their investigation and go through the whole process of determining whether or not actually it's not their position. Their job is to police, which means they apprehend you, they take the weed, they do whatever analysis they got to do on it. If it don't pass the analysis, not only is it confiscated, you're still locked up and you're going to trial for something. And the
Right.
worst part about it is it could be declared medical, but guess what? It's not declared medical until a court declared medical. And that
Nope.
could take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 12, 15, 20, 24 months. How much of your life you got to lose
Right.
to that process? So now let's just say you're caught up in that process. And you're caught up in that process for 2 years. You're already going to lose your home because you put a bond up on your home for your freedom. So you're already in a situation. Then if they take your freedom, then you have a whole nother problem right after that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it is a gray area. There is a slippery slope, and you have to navigate that carefully.
Right. Now, with, as we stated, Minnesota joining and becoming the 23rd state where it's fully legal. Now, that means that there are 17 states that have medical only. So, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I know this is easy. 23 states have fully legalized, 17 have medical only. So that puts us at what number?
Say that one more time. 23 states, and we only have 17.
Have fully legalized the marijuana, recreational, all of this, okay? So medical marijuana is in 17 states. Remember, these are different states. So the 23 full is a different number than the 17, right? So what does that total put us at when you add those two together?
You get about 8% on one, and make sure I got that right. You got.
You're overthinking
Hold
it,
on,
but
doing the
okay.
calculations. Hold on, I'm working on the calculations right now.
Because all I was really looking for was that right there.
40%.
No, 40 states.
40
20 plus
states.
17. So how is it that when we have 50 states in the U.S., 23 are fully legalized, 17 have medical. We still have 10 that don't have anything whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think those are conservative states are either liberal.
But it just that's something in my head that just blows my mind that you look at, for example, Mississippi has medical, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, South Dakota, Alabama. These all have medical. Then you go to the ones who have fully, we're not going through the whole list, but Minnesota now, Virginia, New Jersey, Michigan, California, Nevada, Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. We have 40 states that have some form. How in the world, Ian, I get what you're saying about conservative, but how do we even have 10 that still don't have anything whatsoever? That to me, that blows me away.
I got a twisted mindset on this one. Hear me out. So I'm not sure what states those are, but I want to look at the discrepancy when it comes to the equity in the business itself. Look
Okay.
at the states that have a large minority population. And those states, a good number of them, still have not enacted their decrim policy. And a lot of them have not pardoned people's crimes when it came to possession. So look at those states in particular and look at the crimes when it comes to possession. And I'm willing to
Okay.
bet you that those states' crimes are very, very low.
So we'll look at this later. However, let's see. I was trying to see if I could pull them up a little bit here. They're just showing me the fully legal and mixed, so I'm not seeing who's not. But yeah, I'd like to see what that is. That brings up a very, very good point. Who does and who doesn't, because that could be exactly your key point there.
I'm gonna answer that for you in 1 second. I'm gonna look up
Okay.
what states
It's like Hawaii has medical, but it does not have recreational.
Yeah.
Idaho has neither. Indiana has neither. Nebraska, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Wisconsin, Wyoming all have neither.
Yep. It gave me the whole map. The one that I'm looking at now, and South Carolina. It's kind of interesting. South Carolina is not, but South Carolina, I feel, is one of those states where they're still in the twilight zone. I don't understand when it comes to law, legislation, and so forth. I think they're behind.
Yep. There's your
Indiana,
gray. Your
our
grays
former
have
vice
none.
president's from Indiana.
Right.
Yeah. Then you got Wisconsin. I'm kind of surprised Wisconsin because
Right.
of the population there. Racine in Milwaukee has a good population of blacks and minority, but the rest of the state don't. Nebraska, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska, in my opinion, don't have a huge problem when it comes to drugs or drug apprehension of individuals regarding possession. Wyoming, I feel, is in that same category. Idaho is still in that same category.
Yep.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got to be missing a couple of states somewhere.
Okay, well, I'll just run them down again. So you've got Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Wisconsin, Indiana, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina.
Well, just to give you an update, Kansas and Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina allow low THC
Right,
medicinal. So technically they do.
right.
So you have to take those off the list. So Kansas, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, they actually have added something regarding a low THC medicinal legal.
Right, and like right here, for example, it says this does not include states that have legalized only CBD based oils to what you just stated. So yes, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. I got to give those states a pass. The other six is questionable of what's the holdup.
Exactly. No, 100%. So we definitely had some information that we covered today, some interesting stuff, some a little bit deep dive, especially into what Minnesota's just started. Hopefully, this will not be gray and this will be fantastic for them. But we're up on that hour of the first Wednesday of August now. So, closing thoughts from you, a couple of ideas, and then where people can reach out and connect with you.
First and foremost is to continue to talk about it. Any news in any state is great news.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those things can be used as a guide in the
Yep.
state that you reside in, to possibly open the doors to making it legal medicinally and recreationally. So, continue to dive into the discussion. Please hear us out. Please listen to anybody else's podcast that talks about what's actually going on. Our opinions in this are our opinions, but for the most part, we're pushing to see that this continue to be able to be a tremendous opportunity for America. America needs relief. America needs a product that can put the power back in their pot and take it right out of China. China generates more than $800 million in CBD and cannabis sales, and that should be put here. That gives jobs, that gives opportunities, that gives structure, that gives regulation to take care of a lot of the poverty that's going on, the unemployment that's going on. It creates and opens the door for opportunity. So please continue to look and hear our discussion and look at what other states are doing. Please talk about it so that way it can become a normal conversation for the different legislators in the different states to be able to know and have a little bit more to take to those closed sessions so that way we can get this to the marketplace.
Well, and
Follow
a
me.
fair. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say follow me, Big Boy Sam, on IG. Follow me, Sammy Murphy on LinkedIn.
And I was going to say real quick on that, you brought up a fair point. Yes, in any discussion that anybody has, there are going to be some opinions. And you're right, we're going to give some of our opinions, but we try to keep as much to the factual base, what we see, what we have researched. Maybe sometimes we're misguided on the research. That's going to happen, but we're trying to do the best to educate ourselves and you. And yes, we are going to have opinions, but don't let anybody's opinion sway you one way or the other. Do your own research and formulate your own thoughts and opinions on everything from this to the politics to you name it. Be educated, and that's the best that we can try to do as well.
Yeah, totally agree.
But yeah, here we go. Great week. We look forward to seeing all of you guys next week. Tell a friend. Feedback, comments, questions, we welcome them on any of our platform at any time. Guys, stay hydrated. Try to stay as cool as possible. Take care of yourself and others. Reach out to me, DJNQ75 on Twitter, which I'm sorry is now X. Not Twitter anymore, is it? It's now X. Instagram, and also on that new product Threads, which we're doing as much as well. But we look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday. Stay safe out there. Be kind to each other, and we will see you next week.